There we go. So the first is learning how to conduct market research to identify your target markets, customer needs, competition, and then how to use that information that you've collected to develop better offerings that better meet the needs of your target markets. And then we will go into the branding bit of tonight, talk about what a brand is, why it's important, and talk about some of the visual aspects of a brand too. So as I move through tonight, I'm going to be using some terms that you maybe have not heard before or aren't super familiar with. So just to define those for all of us, the first is market research. So this is the process of gathering and analyzing data about potential customers, competitors, and industry trends. Those are the big three. In your workbook, we touch a little bit on pricing, which is another aspect of market research. But we don't get super into it tonight. We'll talk about pricing and margins and break-even points more in Thursday's session during the finance portion. Target market. This is the specific group of people or businesses, if you're a B2B business, that a product or service is designed for and marketed to. So these are the folks that you want in your doors. And you could argue that these are the folks who are most likely to buy your product or service. And then demographic is the physical characteristics of a specific group of people. So as you're looking at market research for your customers, for potential customers, this might include age, race, gender, income level. Kind of as you move through like a census survey, that's what demographics are. It's any specific characteristic about a group of people. And these can really be important as you go through market research. I'll talk about a few resources for researching demographics. And the last is competition. You know the word, but just the way that we'll be using it is other businesses of a similar size within the same industry or market that offer similar products or services to that same target market that you've defined. So competition, as we define it, does not include a similar business that serves Los Angeles County, right? It's a business similar to yours that serves the same target market. If you're serving a physical space, right? So if you are e-commerce, which I don't believe anyone in this group, well, yeah, we actually might have a few e-commerce. So this is going to look different depending on if you're e-commerce or if you have a physical area that you're serving. But again, any business, similar size within the same industry or market.
Quick question, e-commerce, is that that could include just like having physical products that you ship to customers, or is it specifically only online based?
No, that can include, so like my business, I sell online. I ship across the US, but I also sell at like pop-ups and events here in the Twin Cities. I am a partially e-commerce business. Does that answer your question, Katie?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you can be a mix. Like we talked about products and services last week. Same with e-commerce. You can be a mix of e-commerce and physical. And I think that's kind of becoming more common as, I mean, just as technology develops and especially post-pandemic, more and more people are shopping online. So good clarification. Thanks, Katie. So what actually is market research? I gave you kind of the broad strokes definition in that last slide. It's the process of gathering, analyzing, and interpreting information about a market. So when we talk about market research and conducting market research, it's not just like the Googling or the doing surveys or focus groups that is market research. It is also the process that comes after that, where you are interpreting that information and using it to develop your business idea, your offerings, identify your target market, all that good stuff. So market research includes details about potential customers, competitors, and the overall business environment. So again, that might include industry, trends, pricing strategies, etc. And the goal of market research is to gain insights that can help your small business make informed decisions. Really at the core of market research, you'll notice as I walk us through how to do it, how to use it, is making sure that you have demand for your product or service. As you look at potential customers, competitors, industry trends, you're making sure that you can do this thing. That is why you're doing market research. So if we look back at that DAVE acronym I introduced at the end of last session, that's what it is. It's kind of checking off those boxes of, is this desirable? Is it achievable? Is it viable? And is it ethical? Can be more of a reflection, a kind of internal dialogue. But the DAV of DAVE is really where you're digging into this market research. Do people want this thing? Can I make money doing it? Can I do it? So entrepreneurs can use market research to guide product development and business strategy in a few ways. The first is location. So you can use market research to identify the optimal location for your business, and this can look a few different ways. It might look like a demographic analysis of your target area. Again, if you are looking at either like a storefront or just serving a physical geographic location. It can also mean physically visiting the area to assess foot traffic, road traffic, see what competitors are in the area. Is this an up and coming area? Do the people that I want to be serving already live here? And as we talk about ethicality, you might also take into consideration things like gentrification and make sure that you're not intruding in a community and doing things like raising the rent prices, whether it's inadvertently or not. It can also help you develop your strategy around what products you're offering. So this might include analyzing the offerings of your competitors to either identify gaps or make sure that you're not offering the exact same thing. A lot of my market research was pulling up my competitors' social media, websites, subscribing to their newsletters to see what kind of products they were offering, at what price points, to see if there were any trends, new things that they were introducing into the market. And I use that to determine what products were already, what needs were already being met, right? And what I could potentially do as a small business to fill any gaps. This also might look like researching emerging trends in your industry. So I sing the praises, I maybe already talked about this in session 1, of joining any associations, like industry associations that you can. I have found being a member of the American Booksellers Association such an incredible tool for figuring out what trends are happening in book buying, because they are doing a lot of that research and just sending it out to their members. I don't have to do any work. I just get an email in my inbox every week. And so that is a really easy passive way to research emerging trends if there are industry associations that align with your business idea. And then the last is pricing. You can use market research to set competitive pricing for your offerings. You might start out by looking at the pricing of your competitors. You can research inflation rates, income levels, and look at spending trends. So things like consumer reports can tell you a lot about what pricing strategies work and which ones don't. And there is a page in your workbook that goes over a few different pricing like positions. These are a handful. It talks about, and I can't remember what page it's on from the top of my head, but it talks about positioning your business in terms of pricing in 4 ways, whether that's through product, price, convenience, or experience. So figuring out which one of those kind of identifiers sets your business apart and using that as a way to strategically price your offerings. Does your business stand out because it's convenient, for example, like a drive-through, and using that to define your pricing strategy. I also have an article that I really like that's like just a crazy list of pricing strategies. I think it's like 100 pricing strategies or something. It's just really interesting information. I hope it's not overload, but I'll make a note of that and share it to Talent LMS so that you can check out some more strategic ways to price your goods. Like I said, we'll get more into like what does that actually mean for your business in the next session. So how do you price things? What should your gross margin be? When will you break even? That kind of aspect of pricing we'll get into more next session. So just briefly touching on a few different strategies that you could begin to consider. So, how to start conducting market research. The first step that you should take when you're getting into market research is planning your research. It's so important to know what you're researching and why. And in other words, the next activity is basically figuring out what questions you need answers to, especially if you're doing a lot of your research online. It can just become a black hole where you fall into this cycle of like learning so much and collecting so much information that you kind of fall into like this analysis paralysis where you don't actually make any decisions or move forward because you're so focused on like absorbing as much information as possible. So it's really important that when we're planning for market research, you are figuring out the most important questions that you need answers to right now and focus on those. So this is a few questions to kind of guide your research in these key areas of market research. So target market, location, pricing strategy, competition, channels, and key partnerships are some of the major areas that you'll want to conduct market research pre-launch. So these big questions at the top that are bolded are examples of how you might start thinking about researching in these areas. So target market, who are your ideal customers? And you might want to get more specific than that, but these are a few ways that you might start to research your target market. So defining the ages, genders, interests, preferences, lifestyles of your potential customers, determining what their needs and challenges are. Some of the best ways to do that is actually through social media and seeing what people are complaining about or celebrating. And I'll talk more in a few slides about some of the resources that you can use to begin to answer these questions. This table is in your workbook and the slides are on LMS. So I'm not going to go through every single column here, but I do recommend coming back to this as you take some time to determine what questions you want answered through your market research. Which leads me to our first exercise. I'm just going to give us like 2 minutes to start writing down questions that you want to answer when you start your market research. I want to just give you a minute to jot these down because I know they're probably bouncing around in your head and I'm talking, you can't focus on them. So as this is fresh in your mind, if there's anything that really came up as I was going through those first few slides, just take a minute to write them down. And I will leave this slide up because this might be helpful as you're thinking about those. I'll just give us a minute again if you just want to jot down any questions that are top of mind.
Becky, this might be premature, but can I ask you a question directly? So if you have a business that is both pop-up and e-commerce, do you do this twice or do you do it as one? Like, are you assessing both local businesses and other e-commerce businesses?
That's a really good question. Mine is kind of a unique situation because I made the like strategic decision to focus my marketing in the Twin Cities, even though I do ship across the country, just because the nature of my business is very community focused. So I have gotten to know the Twin Cities really well, and I haven't really focused on expanding my marketing efforts nationwide, if that makes sense. So that's going to differ depending on kind of the strategy that you want to use, if you are going to be a mix of physical and e-commerce. I know that doesn't super answer your question, Katie, but that was my experience.
No, thank you. That's helpful because I have an Etsy shop, but I also do pop up. And so I've done market research with other Etsy competitors, but that's about it. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think a big part of market research for e-commerce is just figuring out, like, when you're doing market research for a physical space, you're figuring out, like, where do the people that I want to sell to live? And when you're doing it for an e-commerce business, you're figuring out where they live online, and seeing if that makes sense to advertise there. So, like, because my business is marketed as queer owned, a lot of like the queer internet spaces are where it would make sense for me to market, if that makes sense.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. Okay. So once you have planned your market research, you are going to want to do the thing. So once you've kind of come up with a set of questions that will guide your research, these are a few resources that we have compiled that we have used and have found super useful to answer these big questions. So just going through a few of these, MinCompass, I will recommend all day, every day. It's like the Census Bureau, but just for Minnesota. And you can like target your demographic analysis down to the neighborhood, which is incredible. Especially useful if you're waffling between a few different neighborhoods you want to be in Minneapolis, for example, but you don't know which neighborhood. Super useful tool. It's really user-friendly. All of these are also linked in your workbook. US Census Bureau is great for demographic research. It's kind of clunky, but play around with the website, with the interface, and you'll get the hang of it. Social media. So this is one that I mentioned. I used social media for so much of my market research, for both determining my target market and researching my competition. For determining your target market, it's a great technique to kind of like see, again, like I said, what are people complaining about online? That is where people complain now. What are they excited about? What are they interacting with? What pages are they following? That is like a whole job. There is literally a job called social media listening, which is when marketers just go through social media and see what people are talking about in order to guide their product development. So yeah, super useful tool. Google Trends is a really cool tool. It basically breaks down what people are Googling and when and where. So you can see kind of trends in the market. When are people searching for certain things, which can help you guide some strategy around the seasonality of your business. Let's see any other big ones I want to mention. SBDC Net is a cool one. They have all kinds of stuff from articles to outside resources to example business plans, industry insights. It's kind of just a catch-all for small business research. So that is a really, really cool one. And then the Directory of Associations is actually how I found the American Booksellers Association. It's just a filterable list of associations. You can filter it by your industry and your location. So if you're interested in joining associations, which I strongly recommend, that is a really good starting point.
Sorry, Becky, which one was that you recommend as a starting point?
The Directory of Associations.
Okay.
So yeah, that can help you not just find associations to join, but as you're in this phase of conducting market research, it can help you pull together data that is behind like a paywall, for example. So I get the ABA weekly emails with industry trends and reports because I'm a member, and I wouldn't have access to that if I wasn't a member. So it is a useful market research tool if you're pre-launch as well.
Is Google Trends free?
Google Trends is free. Yep. So play around with these. This is going to be a long process. I'm just going to skip to the next slide. You can use those tools that we've shared. Like I said, those are all linked in your workbook. They're ones that we've used and that we recommend. So as you're using those, if you run into questions or issues, please feel free to reach out. But also as you dig into this, if you find any market research tools that are really cool that I didn't recommend, please come back to session 3 and share them, because I am always adding to my list. And then outside of internet market research, there are a few additional market research strategies. So when you're using Google, what you're doing is called secondary market research. You're basically compiling research that someone else has already done. So if you can, I strongly recommend doing as much secondary market research as you can. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. So if someone has already done the research, use that. If it's recent, if it's relevant, use it, because you're a small business owner and time is precious. But if your business is really niche, or if you have the time and energy and money to do some additional market research strategies in order to better develop your business concept, then do it, right? This is what is called primary market research. So this is when you're doing the thing. You're the one doing the research, gathering it, and interpreting it. So a few examples are surveys. So this means gathering feedback from existing or potential customers, whether you've opened or not. And it can tell you a lot about what people want, what their pain points are, how much they're willing to spend. Your survey can be focused on whatever area you're trying to gain more insights on. And there are a lot of ways to go about this. And it can be as informal or as formal as you want. So for me, I started my social media pages for my business before I actually launched my business. And I used that as like a survey tool, basically. I was able to gain followers because people were interested in my business idea. And then I used my stories, my posts, to basically conduct informal surveys and ask if this was something folks were interested in, or if this price point worked for them. That was a really useful tool for me. Helped me figure out demand for my product and helped me figure out how to strategically release certain offerings based on feedback. So like when you're a small business owner and I wanted to order tote bags, branded tote bags, but I couldn't order 7 designs because the minimum was 50 tote bags and I don't have like $5,000 to spend on tote bags. I used that survey, quote unquote, as a tool to determine which one did I want to roll out first, which one did people like the most, and then kind of strategically rolled more out from there. Another cool tool is Google Forms. SurveyMonkey is another one. These are just online platforms that host surveys for free and will gather that information for you. So you can share those in places like your Facebook, if you're part of any groups. Another tip is to just join groups that are relevant to your business so you can interact with folks who are doing similar things or are interested in that thing. I've had good luck sharing surveys on Nextdoor. Like I said, my business is very community minded, so I care what the people who live around me think and want. So Nextdoor or any kind of like neighborhood group is a really great place to share those surveys. Especially if you're going to be starting your business in that area, it's a good way to kind of start garnering interest. Another technique is focus groups. So this is a small group of individuals that you pull together, and this can allow for more in-depth insights versus a survey where it's usually just a set of questions. This can take more of the form of a discussion. And again, just like surveys, you make up the rules with your small business. So this can be as formal or as informal as you want. For me, a focus group looked like asking some friends to come over, telling them that I would pay them in pizza, and asking what they thought of a few of my business ideas. If you're interested in a more professional focus group, you can host them in the Women Venture office. You can reserve space in our office to meet people in a professional setting and ask them guided strategic questions about your offerings, your price points, things like that. Social media monitoring is one that I already touched on, especially for customer research or competitor research. You can track conversations on social media to provide insight into what are people talking about, what channels are they using? So like what social media platforms are people using? What's gaining popularity? What's trending? I'm going to make a note because I don't think I have it linked in the workbook, but Pew Research Center, you've probably heard of them. They do a lot of independent research, and they have a super cool article on social media usage. So as you're determining who your target market is, a piece of that puzzle is going to be figuring out where they live online. So this is a cool article that tells you like what demographics are using what social media apps. I'll make sure to link that in LMS too. Customer journey mapping. This is maybe more of a post-launch research strategy, but you can look at customer journey maps for larger corporations. These are things that have been mapped out and are shareable online. But it's basically understanding how customers move through the buying process and using that to identify touch points where your business might not be present. So this can reveal gaps in your marketing channels and also your customer service. A/B testing is really just trying things and seeing if they work. So like I said, this goes back to the survey thing. Just sharing things and seeing what people interact with. And if they don't interact with that, trying something else. That's kind of all of small business ownership, but it's a good way to get insights again into customer activities and interests. And then the last is web analytics. This might also be a post-launch research strategy, but if you have a website, you usually have some kind of built-in analytics tool that will tell you things like website traffic, where people are clicking, how often they're clicking through, which is called the conversion rate. My website allows me to see how many people viewed a specific product and then how many people added that product to their cart and then how many people actually bought it, which is super useful information as I figure out what products work, what products are priced appropriately. Yeah, that's a lot of information. And then just this maybe is, I don't know if this is calming or more makes you more anxious, but this is an ongoing process. You will continue to do market research for as long as you're operating your business, right? There are aspects that you really want to check off pre-launch, those big like 5 or 6 that I mentioned, but you're going to continue doing this work for as long as you run your business. And that's kind of the fun part, at least for me, is just to see like what is happening in my industry. What are people really digging? what I loved looking at the analytics on my posts and seeing what people are interacting with the most, and that can guide some of my strategy and offerings. So this is something you'll continue to do in order to develop your offerings, new products, determine if marketing channels, social media apps are working for you, working for your business. Yeah, I don't know if that's good news or bad news, but keep doing it. And it will tell you, at least in this pre-launch phase, you will learn a lot about how to better your business, which is why you're doing this, right? That was a lot of information. I know. Any questions about the just market research, any of the resources or tips that I shared? Oh, well, this is a great time for a
I have a
break.
question. I have a
Oh,
question.
yeah,
Sorry.
Maddie, please.
Sorry, I don't know why it took me so long.
No, I get it.
So I'm just curious, like, how, like, when would you feel satisfied that you've like done enough
Enough.
that it's like an ongoing process, and I get
Yeah.
that, but I'm thinking about, you know, like loan application and all these things, and like having a business plan ready and stuff, and it's like, I feel like it's really hard to be like, okay, this is like enough information, especially when the information is hard to find. So
Sure. Yeah.
tips on that.
I'm so sorry for what I'm gonna say, but my tip is that you just kind of have to trust your gut, because I see, as someone who interacts with so many business owners, I see so many business owners get stuck in that where it's just like, I need more information. How many more classes can I take? And at some point, you just have to bite the bullet and do the thing. And we share this in Getting Ready, but the idea that it's better to go to market with maybe not enough information than to either never do it or delay it so long that you miss like a crucial opportunity point. So I hate to say that, it depends on your business and how you're feeling, but that's the truth. And a good way to know that is to just talk to people, right? So like I found so much help in just doing the thing by sharing my idea, sharing where I was, like where my mind was, and getting feedback from my community and my friends and my family. So
Okay.
that's
I
my
mean, I like that advice because that's easier than like just constantly being trying to find more stuff. that
No,
you
I
can't
get
find,
it.
but
And I hate seeing that when folks just get like, it's like I said, analysis paralysis where you just feel like frozen. So
Mhm.
yeah, I hope that helps a little bit.
Okay, yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay, I would love to take a little break because I've been talking your ear off. So I think we'll come back at like 7:10. That gives us 5 minutes. I'll try and come back and give us a 1-minute warning, but I'll start this little 4-minute timer so you can keep an eye on the time. Thanks, guys. come back in about a minute. All right. So I'm going to get into how to build a brand, what it is and why it's important. This is one of my favorite parts of starting and running a business. If you're right-brained, you're going to love this. If you're a little more left-brained, you might hate this, but hopefully we can break it down for you and make it a little less stressful. So to define a brand, you've heard the word, you know, kind of in essence what it means, right? But to clearly define it so that we're all kind of on the same page is a recognizable set of designs, naming conventions, graphics, colors, messages, and values, which distinguish your service and products from others. That part, values, is super duper important, and it's something that I think a lot of folks, when they're thinking about building a brand, don't consider. So I'm going to spend a bit of time talking about why that's important and how it can actually help you inform your visual brand, which is usually the part that people think about. Branding can help to make your brand recognizable, consistent, and trustworthy. And branding can show potential customers what sets you apart from the competition. So when we talk about a brand being recognizable, consistent, and trustworthy, the one that always comes to mind for me is Target, a true Minnesota girl. They know what they're doing with their branding, right? Even if you see like a Target, the symbol of a Target, you're thinking of the store Target. It's incredibly recognizable. It's very consistent. They have not strayed from their logo since they started. And they've built a lot of trust, especially here in the Twin Cities where they were born. So yeah, let's talk about how to use your values to build a brand and to help building that recognizable, trustworthy image. So this is a template that we've built to help you start thinking about what you want your brand to convey. So at the core of a brand is, what message do you want people to receive when they're interacting with your brand? So we've built a house, the brand house. A brand will tell your customers so much about your business before they even step through the door. So the brand house asks you to consider a number of like values and your vision, your priorities as a business owner. So the roof of the brand house is your mission. So this is what keeps your home consistent and warm, right? Your mission statement is similar in that it couches your business in your values. And it encourages you to brand yourself around these values that you've identified, in order to build up that trustworthiness and that consistency. And then under the mission is the vision. So this supports the roof. It's part of the roof, and this is what serves as a constant informant of your mission, right? And my next slide is defining these two because I think they get muddled a lot. So I'm going to really clearly define them separately on the next slide. But really, your mission is what you want to do, and your vision is where you want to go. That's the easiest way to break it down. And then these middle objectives include communication, your value proposition, why your message is believable, the benefit to the customer, which is really almost all that the customer cares about, your target customer. And then the foundation of your business are your values and your priorities. So communication objectives, these serve as a benchmark for tactical outputs, planning, decision-making, and measuring results. I'm going to give an example of what that may look like. But what do you want to be communicating? What do you want people to understand? Your value proposition, we talked about in session 1. This is what sets you apart, what makes you unique in your market. Why your message is believable. So this can take a few different forms. It might look like saying that you are a trustworthy business and then showing it by listing all of your qualifications as a business owner. It might look like saying that you're eco-friendly and then being really transparent about how and where you source your products or your inventory from. The customer benefit, what's in it for me? It's such a crass way of saying it, but it's speaking to what is the customer going to get out of your business? What do you, if they are looking at your brand, what do you want them to understand about the benefit for them? And then this goes hand in hand with that is to whom are you speaking? Who's asking that question and who are you answering it to? And then values and priorities, I'm going to separate those in my example because it's a little bit easier to see as you have examples. But first, I want to just differentiate because I'm going to give you a chance to work on your own what a mission statement and what a vision statement is. So I pulled this from the SBA. A mission statement defines your objectives. It outlines how you plan to achieve your company goals, and it defines the purpose of the organization or why you exist. Versus a vision statement speaks to the future of the business, what your company aspires to be, and where your company is going. So these can get mixed up. Mission statement, vision statement, they sound almost exactly the same. They are very similar, but one is really couched in the present and one is looking towards the future. So here's that example. So you remember that we have our 3 example businesses. Form is one of them. So this is I'm actually just going to read her mission statement here. So to provide a trendy, chic, high quality, plus size streetwear brand made by ethical artists in sizes extra small to 7X. So again, looking back at a mission statement and what that is, it's defining who they are, how they want to achieve those goals, and why they exist, right? And then if we look at their vision statement, we envision a world where fashion is inclusive, empowering, and sustainable. So coming back to what does the future look like? And what are they working towards? What goals are they working towards? And it's a more inclusive, empowering future. I love that. So when they talk about communication objectives, this is what they want people to understand about the business, when they look at their branding. So all people of all sizes, races, and genders deserve to feel good, look good, and know that their clothing was sourced ethically. So that's what they want people to understand. That's what they are communicating to their target customer. Their value proposition, we've gone over this a bunch in last session, is just what sets them apart. Why this message is believable is really important. This is how you're basically backing up any claims that you're making. So Form is asserting that because of what fashion currently looks like, what they know fashion buying currently looks like, they are different in these ways. And then customer benefit, this speaks for itself. Target customer, this can be as specific or as broad as is useful to you as you're building out your brand. But this is a really important piece of the puzzle because you want branding that's going to resonate with the folks that you're trying to draw in, right? So I'll talk more about what that might look like visually, but this is interconnected with every other piece of this puzzle. And then Form has their values and their priorities here. So values is really what is important to you as a person and as a business owner. Again, this is the foundation of your brand. Your priorities are similar in that they kind of feed into this, but this is how you're going to do it. So Form is living out their values. They're speaking to their mission and their vision by doing these things, by offering larger sizes, by sourcing fair trade and ethically, by empowering their community. All these, like, this is giving like synergy. You know how like corporate people will just say the word synergy and you're like, what does that mean? I know a lot of these words can kind of blur together, but I hope that by seeing an example side by side in your workbook with the template can kind of help differentiate between those terms. So again, when we're thinking about our branding, the first thing you want to do is figure out who you are as a business owner, what's important to you, what you want people to understand about your business, and then get into the visual aspect, because those all feed into the visual aspect in the colors you use, the fonts you use, what your logo looks like. And so by figuring out who you are first, you can better understand what you want your brand to convey. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to look at the brand house in your workbook. You have the template, you have an example, and you have a blank one. To start thinking about, what does my brand represent? This is also going to be a longer process than a 5-minute work session. But while it's fresh in your brain and you maybe have some ideas milling around that you want to get out of your brain and onto paper, feel free to start filling in that template with what you know already. And if you just have a bunch of questions, you're like, what are my values? That's fine, write those down. But I'll give us about 5 minutes to start working on that. So 7:28-ish, I'll give us like a 1-minute warning. And I'll stay on camera here if you have any questions. come back in about a minute if you want to start wrapping up your thoughts. All right. I will be moving on to talking about building your visual brand. So are there any questions about the values and communication aspects of building your brand? Cool. I will move into the visuals then. Just a reminder too, I'm moving through this like long information heavy PowerPoint. And so this is kind of the process that you want to follow as you're thinking about building your brand. So first is planning your market research, doing the market research, using that research to better develop your idea or your offerings or your target market, and then starting to think about what you want your brand to convey and who you want to be as a brand. And then getting to this part where you're actually building out the visuals of your brand. If you're right brain like me, it is so exciting to start building out a visual brand that it's the first thing you want to do. And I can say from experience, jumping into it without doing all that pre-work is just going to be more work down the road because I'm already considering a brand update and I'm still very early in my business. So do the front end work because it's going to make your life so much easier down the road. And this is a brand that you're going to see all day, every day. So make it something that you really love and want to stick with. So as we get into brand feel and visuals, I'm just going to go over some of the basic concepts of what a visual brand is, what it looks like, and some of the important aspects of it. This is, again, like you can have a degree in branding or marketing or graphic design, and we're going to be talking about it for like 20 minutes. So this is kind of just the important bits. There's a lot more, and I can share some other outside resources too that can help make this a little bit easier. But first, just to kind of define distinct visuals as you're building your brand can help your business be memorable, easily recognizable. And like we've been talking about for the last 10, 15 minutes, they can also portray messages about what consumers can expect from your business. Logos, colors, fonts, symbols, other visual brand elements can tell your customers about your values, your style, your business environment, and even your cost bracket. It's so interesting to see like the psychology of visual branding. And so I'm going to get into that a little bit. So when you're considering colors for your visual brand, our brains do crazy things and will make connections that aren't visually there. And so as you look at this like chart, you'll realize that your brain does this too. Red usually has like a connotation of power, passion, action, danger, right? Pink, feminine, youthful, romantic. It can also be really a bold color. So like the Cosmo, this Cosmo is kind of all of these things, but it is just along with the text, a really bold statement with that hot pink. Green has that connotation of nature, peace, sustainability. So if you're building an eco-conscious brand, green is a great color. Blue is kind of the go-to color for like big like conglomerates and corporations because it always has this air of like trustworthiness and strength and dependability. And then there's some examples down here. It is hilarious that BP is green, right? Like the least eco-friendly business you could think of. But it's like the flower and it's green and it is making you think like, oh, world, peace, eco-friendly. So it's doing a little switcheroo on you there. It's using that psychology. And then as you consider fonts for your visual branding, these in the same way have connotations that kind of go unspoken. You're making connections in your brain. Serif fonts. So a serif font is any font that has these little tabbies. These are serifs. These kind of give like a classic, timeless air. Modern sans serif kind of gives that modern energy. Script fonts can give elegant, upscale. Be careful with script fonts because they can get really hard to read really fast. So be cautious. This is a good one. It's very clear what it says. Handwritten fonts can give an air of like informal, youthful, creative, maybe. So yeah, your brains do this where we make these connections and we assume things about brands based on the colors and the fonts that we see them using. I have a few examples. So as we look at some local brands that we know and love, Caribou is a really good example. They use that blue, like I mentioned, very trustworthy, dependable. They have this kind of scripty, kind of handwritten font, which is giving like creative, energetic, maybe, which caffeine, love. Patina, if you know it, they're like a very upscale, kind of bougie gift shop. And their logo hits the nail on the head. It's got the serif font. It's got these laurel leaves, which are very upscale, like ancient Greek, right? And something really interesting that they've chosen to do is to include the date of their establishment in their logo, which is really strategic because it's also speaking to their longevity and trustworthiness. They've been around for over 30 years now. And then Little Tijuana, this is one of my favorite logos in the Twin Cities. They're a little kind of funky neighborhood lounge restaurant bar in South Minneapolis. And so the handwritten font, the yellow is very bubbly, very youthful, energetic. This cheeky little logo is so cute, so fun, kind of whimsical. And what is interesting is, again, our minds are making these connections without us even knowing it, because if I heard neighborhood lounge, I would maybe think upscale. Maybe that's like lounge. I'm 30 years old. Maybe that has a different connotation to different generations. But I think of like upscale. But then if I pair it with the rest of the logo, I'm like, okay, no, this is a casual, fun, funky place. And if you were to go to Little Tijuana and it was like a Michelin star rated restaurant and everybody was in formal wear and they were white tablecloths, you would be very confused because their branding conveys a message, right? So that's what you're doing. I mean, at the core of branding, you're conveying what you want people to understand about your business. So this is that same example business form, the luxury, kind of like ethically minded, inclusive boutique. So this is an example of what that brand might look like. She's used a kind of formal upscale serif font, which again is a font that we associate with luxury and timelessness. She's used very simple colors, including a green, which is conveying that eco-friendly, ethically minded, clean image. And something that I recommend as you're starting to consider your visual brand is getting onto whatever kind of inspiration website you like. I love Pinterest. And just punching in words that you want associated with your business. So once you've identified your values and your priorities, punching those words in on Pinterest or Google or wherever you get inspiration and seeing what comes up and kind of building a mood board around that. You can start, because as soon as you pull together more than like 4 or 5 images, you'll start to see trends. So you'll notice, like, if I Googled upscale luxury boutique or ethically made, these are the images that come up. And I immediately am seeing trends of green, clean, crisp. So I love doing that, building a mood board to start to look at like what is really coming out when you input your values or whatever it is into the internet. And there are examples of all 3 of our example businesses of their branding in the workbook too, if you want to see some more examples. But also just look to brands that you know have similar values and priorities. Look at brands that you're just drawn to because of their visual branding. And start to notice those trends and what are you pulling out? What is standing out to you about the things that you love or notice? So just like with last time, or I'm just going to give us like 2 or 3 minutes just to start jotting down ideas about your visual branding based on some of the reflection that we've done so far and the learning that we've done so far. Like I said, I hope that you move through this process of building your brand in the same way that we learned it tonight. So doing your market research, analyzing it, developing your business idea, defining your business, its values, its priorities, its mission, and then getting to this part. But I know if you're like me, you have so many thoughts right now. So I want to just give some space to let you write down some of those ideas and get them out of your brain and onto paper. So I'll give us just like 2 minutes to jot down some of those ideas or questions. You probably also have a lot of questions right now for yourself. So
I have a question, just about like ethics and legal stuff behind using like AI or things like that to create your logo. I'm just curious because I know under some of them it says like you shouldn't be using this for, I don't know what the legalese is, but you know what I mean? Like, especially now with like a lot of the image generating AI.
totally. Yeah. I'm so not a lawyer. So I am going to defer your question to session 4 when we'll have a business lawyer in class with us. That's a super good question. And copyright trademark is such a specialized field of law that if you still have questions, I do have a copyright trademark lawyer that I can connect you with. But I've never used any of those AI like image generating tools, so I just don't know.
No, I think it's a great question. But it like occurs. I have a logo now that I had a graphic designer create, but for a while, you know, I was trying to find alternatives, and I know you could say like go on Canva and they can, or there's like a dozen other like logo generators out there.
For sure, for sure.
But with the advent of all the fancy new AI things, I was just curious.
No, it's a really good question. All right, cool. That's actually a really good point, Katie. And we do, if you graduate, remember that you do have access to 3 expert advising sessions. And we do have an incredible copyright trademark lawyer in our database. So if you have questions as you're beginning to build out your visual brand, utilize that because she knows everything and it's confusing and I think it might be purposefully confusing. So yeah, definitely utilize that resource as we come up on graduation. Any other questions about building a visual brand? All right. That is all I have for content around market research and branding. So I'd love to encourage you as we walk away from tonight's session to just take a minute to write down 1 or 2 or 3 action steps that you'd like to create for yourself based on what you learned today. So it might be hopping on Pinterest and pulling some inspiration. It might be playing around with the market research tools that we shared tonight. Whatever it is, just jot it down somewhere that you'll see it. And I would love to have you all share one of those with your small group. It's a really good way to keep yourself accountable to the things you say you're gonna do. So we do have time. I'm really happy we have time because since I did cut some of you off to regroup in those small groups. And so please, in these I'll hang out for the full 15 minutes that we have until 8. If your conversations wrap up before then, feel free to just scoot. But I'd love for you to just wrap up those conversations you're having, share the action steps that you want to take in the next couple days or the next week after you've learned about market research and branding. Any other top of mind items that you might be just noodling on right now and maybe want some insight or some feedback on? And any other questions, comments, and reflections. This is just kind of your time to use as you wish. Connect in the way that works best for you. So I'm just going to quickly wrap up my last 2 slides. And then I'm going to put you, Missy, it's so much information. I'm going to re-put you in those groups. And also just a reminder to Missy and to everyone that these recordings are available on LMS along with just the slides, if it's helpful for you to just move through the slides instead of the recording. Those links are in your workbook and you don't need to do all of this right now. My goal is just to give you kind of a framework and resources and tips to revisit as it makes sense for you to revisit. I hope that you don't think you have to cram all of this, like the doing, in 2.5 weeks that you're in this class. So take what you can right now. Your brain can only absorb so much. And then you have the rest to revisit whenever you're ready. So just 2 things to do before we next meet, which is on Thursday. Reminder, this is a twice a week class. So session 3 will be on Thursday, same time, same place, and we'll be talking about finance. So first, continue to conduct your market research and build your brand. Again, if that makes sense for you to do right now. And then 2, before session 3, I encourage you to play around with the financial template that our facilitators will be going over. We'll have 2 financial advisors who have been financially advising for years and also were teachers for years. So they are perfect. They break things down so well. They know what they're talking about. And they're going to be referring to the spreadsheet a lot in session 3. So it's on Talent LMS. Go poke around in it and bring any questions that you have to session 3. And then this is just a glimpse of what you'll be doing in session 3. This looks like a lot, but again, our facilitators are incredible human beings and break this down so easily. I think this is the most stressful session as you walk into it, but once you leave, I think you'll feel a lot more at ease. So I'm going to open up those breakout rooms. Any questions before we say goodnight? Or before I say goodnight to you?
Becky, this is Summer. I have a question.
Yes.
Just, I think one thing I personally struggle with a bit about the marketing components is like sort of what you said. Like I can get into like analysis paralysis mode and just start going into deep dive on information. And I feel like I find maybe, I don't know, like conflicting or like information that could send me down multiple paths. When we
Mhm.
talk about actions, I feel a little bit like uncertain on like how to start as far as like once I do the research, like I've done a survey, I've done like some like social media monitoring, some of that stuff. Like I think I struggle with like what's the next step after that where I figure out how to build my Explore Wells audience. How do I start to actually build my own engagement? Are we going to talk about that more a different week, or is that really now like left up to us once we do some of like this research and understand our market a bit more? Like we have to figure out those strategies.
It is more kind of on your plate now because it is so different from business to business and industry to industry. Like I said, I do want to share some of those resources on where to build an audience and how to start doing that. I've collected those over the last couple of years as we've been facilitating this. Uh, but this is just kind of like how to start getting into it. And I'm not going to get any more into like how to build an audience, whether it's through social media or in person. Again, because it differs so much from business to business and industry to industry. But I can share a couple resources, and I also can share a webinar that we did recently on creating engaging content and building a following. So I'm happy to share that webinar. And that will again just kind of give you the broad strokes of what it looks like to build an online following and where to start.
Okay, that would be helpful.
Cool. And that's also good feedback. And I hope that maybe that's something we can continue to build into this in kind of that overview, broad strokes way. Cool. Anything else before I get you into those breakout rooms for the last 10 minutes?
I just have a follow-up question. Is that like, so do you guys do like free webinars or
No, we have webinars like on an ad hoc basis as folks reach out with a specialty and they're interested in facilitating those. The best way to stay up to date on those is subscribing to the newsletter because they just kind of come up as we get experts that are interested in facilitating them. There's usually like a $5 fee. But once it's happened, I'm happy to share them out with cohorts. Like this one was technically paid, but it's come and gone. So may as well continue to share that information.
yeah, I'd be interested in seeing that one too. So.
Cool. Okay, well, like I said, I'll stay here for the next 10 minutes until 8 o'clock. The rooms will auto shut at 8. So feel free to hang out until then. If your conversations wrap up early, feel free to just jet. And we'll see you on Thursday. Thank you so much, guys.